Okay, good day YTSS. This is Mr. Ng here, and what I'm planning to do now is to do a screencast on how to go about to work on your holiday assignment for history. Now I hope that some of you have already started on the project, and I know that they are facing some challenges, so I'm going to take this time to go through very briefly what are the things that you need to do. Now the first thing that you realize in your screencast is that there is actually a task that you are expected to do. You're supposed to watch a video first, and you're supposed to read the two articles. In fact, the two articles there do have certain information about the task, which is, was Mr. Lee Kuan Yew responsible for the separation? There will be reasons about the separation about Singapore and Malaysia, and the video together with the two articles will help to give you a little bit of background. You can choose not to do that, but I will strongly advise you to do so because it allows you to have a better understanding and to supplement whatever that you have in your textbook. Now, after you have watched the videos and the two articles, you're supposed to do three things. 1. You're supposed to use a graphic organizer and summarize the various reasons for the separation between Singapore and Malaysia. That means I would like to know, the teachers would like to know, what are the reasons that led to Singapore and Malaysia. The purpose of this is to allow you to learn about the reasons, okay, the content. The second thing that you will need to do is that you need to answer the question. Now you have been given the table Annex 1, and you can choose to write down all the answers in Annex 1 on the second page of your worksheet, or you can choose to reproduce it. It's up to you. You can type it out, you can print it out, and then you can write down your notes on it. You're supposed to use your textbook information and then to rearrange them to fit into the table as shown. Later, I will demonstrate how it is to be done. And finally, the last one is that you're supposed to look for sources. Okay, what we want you to do in this exercise is to find three sources, whether they are primary, secondary, textual, visual, or even video sources. As long as you can find three sources and you already have a stand who is responsible for the separation, you're supposed to find the three sources that supports your stand, which means if you agree that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was responsible, then you have to find three sources, three primaries or secondary sources that says that, oh, Lee Kuan Yew was responsible for the separation. Or if you feel that no, it is not Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, it is other factors, other situation, then you have to find three sources that tells me that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was not responsible. So with that, let me just go through and bring you through the task one by one. Okay, first of all, I must reiterate. Many of you mentioned that there's problems with the video. Let me assure all of you there's nothing wrong with the video. The reason why you may not be able to see the video is perhaps you have not clicked or you have not typed in the URL correctly. Now, the web address is actually this. Notice over here, this is an underscore, which a lot of you have not done so. Now, if you were to click on this, you will see this video over here. Okay, you will see this video over here. Things for you to take note of. An easier way would be to look for Singapore rejected. Take note of this. Okay, this video will give you an idea about the situation in which Singapore was separated from Malaysia. So please take note of this web link over here. Okay, and take a look at the person. He has only two videos. One is Singapore rejected, the other one is Singapore rejected 2. Okay, so you should be able to find the video in that way. Now, going back to the YouTube, remember, just click and find Singapore rejected. You will be able to find that video. Now, the second thing is, the task number 1 was to ask you to do a mind map. Now, if those of you who have actually taken the additional effort to actually look into Google and Google this, or even to look at the dictionary to find out what is a mind map or graphic organizer, is actually something that we use to visually organize ideas. A mind map is usually created around a single concept and is drawn as an image in the center of the top of a blank page, and you can represent idea through words, images, or even parts of the words. So what do I mean by all this thing? Now let me show you one example of a mind map. This is an example of a mind map. If you look at this, this is the central idea. The central idea is about doing something to solve global warming. And notice the very nice pictures and also the words that links to a sub-idea. So all these are actually sub-ideas. So when you have sub-ideas that belongs to the same thing about travel, you know there's bad travel, there's best travel. And if there are other forms of explanation or further elaboration or even further sub-factors, you notice that it is actually spread into smaller strands. Okay, notice that all these things are spread into smaller strands. So this is an example of a graphic organizer or a mind map. Now another form of example is in this way. You can actually write down the key ideas here and you can actually divide them into strands. Notice that in this case there are no pictures. I leave it up to you whether you want to do the first one or this one over here. But remember, these are what we call key ideas. Okay, these are the key reasons, and these are the elaboration of the key reason. And if there's a further elaboration on the elaboration, it should be extended into a subsequent strand. So what is it that you're expected to do? This is what you are told to do. Reasons for the separation between Singapore and Malaysia. And what you need to do now is to divide it into various strands. For example, in this case, I divided into political. And within the political strand, there might be different reasons. And what I'm doing here are actually the separate reasons. So you can do it this way, or if you want to choose it in the graphical method, you can actually do it in this way. So this is an example of using a graphical representation, and you can also further create separate strands. Now with all that in mind, you can also create further strands like what you see over here, which helps to elaborate other ideas. So this is roughly what is expected of you during your task number 1. So once you've completed your task number 1, you are supposed to submit a graphic organizer in this way. Do make it colorful, do make it informative so that people will know what are the key ideas. And this is actually very helpful for you when you do your revision. Okay, so the next thing is task number 2. Now what is task number 2? After you have read out your textbook and you're done task number 1, watching the video, reading all the article, you should have a very good idea about the various reasons. And what you'll need to do now is to look at the factors in two perspectives. I do not need you to talk about the factors anymore because I want you now to look at it and to make what we call a judgment call. What are the two perspectives that I want you to look at? 1, based on the factors there, does that show that Lee Kuan Yew was responsible? Or was it that it was actually not the fault of Lee Kuan Yew? That means other people were responsible. So what do I mean by this? Okay, let me just show you how we are supposed to put the factors on either side of Annex 1. Example, this is something that I have taken from the textbook. Okay, Malaysia proposed increasing the amount of contribution that Singapore have to give to the federal government. Singapore felt unfair. Now, this is something that I have extracted from the textbook. And what I want you to look at is this table over here. What you see is that you have Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was responsible, Lee Kuan Yew was not responsible. Now, take a look at this factor here. Which side do you think it should be on? Is it the one on the right or is it the one on your left? Now, if you say that it is the one on your right, then you are correct because this shows that it was Malaysia who actually created the separation by asking and demanding for contribution in Singapore, but that Singapore have to give to the federal government. That creates their unhappiness, resulted in the separation. So it was not Mr. Lee's fault. So let me give you another example. Now, the same thing, I picked this out from the textbook. The PAP decided to gather all the pro-Malaysian, Malaysian Party and set up the Malaysian Solidarity Convention. This action challenged the Malay preferential rights which angers the Malays in Malaysia. Now, if you read thoroughly in the textbook, and again, let's look at this big table over here. Now, when the PAP decided to set up this MSC, when they want to have a Malaysia Solidarity Convention that allows all Malaysians to have the same right, it challenges the rights of the Malay. Now, who was responsible? In this case, it was very clear. The person who came up with this idea was Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, and therefore the actions of the PAP angered the people in Malaysia. That is why he was responsible for the separation. Now, with that in mind, you can now use all the information and place them into the separate folder. Now, finally, the last activity. You're supposed to find 3 sources to support your stand. So, if you remember what we did just now, we are talking about whether Mr. Lee was responsible or Mr. Lee was not responsible. Let's say you feel that no, the whole entire merger was not the responsibility of Mr. Lee. Therefore, you have to find 3 other sources to support your stand to tell me who do you think was responsible. So in this case, I feel that Mr. Lee, if I feel that Mr. Lee will be responsible, then I look for sources to show that it's true. But if I don't agree to it, I will find 3 sources that shows that the statement is false. Okay, now this is what you need to do. For example, this is the source that I have found. It is an extract of an interview of Tengku Abdul Rahman on Mr. Lee, and this is the extract. Now, based on this extract, it was very clear. The first thing that you need to do, as what the instruction was given, was to write down the URL. If this source was actually taken from the internet, I need to know the URL. If it's from a book, I need to know what is the name of the book. If it's a video, I need to know the web link of the video, and you need to write it down in this manner. The next thing that you need to do is to summarize the content of the source. And if it's a textual source, you need to tell me what does it mean. Infer about the source. So in this case, this source tells me that it was Mr. Lee Kuan Yew who was responsible for the separation. In the first paragraph, he says that Singapore was a bad leg that needs to be amputated. So he says that Singapore needs to be amputated. And in the second paragraph, it says that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was very ambitious. He sees himself as a leader. So all these things clearly suggest that it was Mr. Lee who was responsible for the separation. So you can see that from this, it shows that Mr. Lee was very ambitious. That's why he was responsible. So you have to look for 3 of the sources that are similar, meaning they all show that Mr. Lee was responsible. Okay, now with that, I've given you a very brief outline of what you're expected to do. If you have any further questions, do feel free to check with the teachers, but I believe that all of you should have a very clear idea what needs to be done. Okay, so with that, have fun with your learning, and I'll see you back in term 3. Thank you.